It's time for health tips. Now here's your host, Dr. Alma Jenkins.
Good evening. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Alma Jenkins, and this is Health Tips. I am so glad that you decided to tune in tonight. You know, I run into some of you in the stores, as I've said before, and you're telling me that you're lifting your cans, that you're listening to the show, and I hope that you're telling someone else about the show, because I want this information to get out. I want to know that, that we're telling you something that you're using, and we want this to improve your health. Now, tonight we're going to do a rather simple dish, but there's an ingredient in it that you may have to go and purchase if you want to use the exact same thing I'm using. You don't have to. You can substitute plain old salt and pepper for it. But before we get into it too much, I want to just let you know that Health Tips is willing to come to your church or your organization and give a talk or a demonstration, whatever would help your group. Just drop us a line at the station and let us know. If you have a preference for what you'd like us to talk about, let us know that. All right? Okay, so the year is going by really fast. And I know you've been putting off, you said, well, I'm going to stop eating this junk food, in a little bit. You're so stressed that you're eating whatever you can because you only have a short time to have your lunch. Well, what you need to do is pack your lunch. And that way you have control of what you're eating that day. And then try not to just make your eating 3 big meals a day. Have healthy snacks in between. That'll cut your appetite and you won't eat so much. But tonight what we're going to do is something simple. I had it for breakfast this morning. I really did, truly. And it was so good. I said, you know what? I have got to do this on the show because this is delicious. And I just took some stuff I already had and I put it together and it turned out wonderfully. So what are we going to use? We're going to use some mushrooms. I went and got some nice fresh mushrooms. We're going to use some broccoli, a good source of calcium. We're going to use some spices. Now the one spice you probably don't have is the Spice Bouquet salad seasoning. Any of you who have been to this particular organization know that they have wonderful spices. It's on 70 like you're going to Kinston. And there's a little place called Spice Bouquet. And you can get all kind of spices there. I'm using this, but you don't have to. You can just use salt and pepper if you like. But it puts a nice spin on it. So we're going to use rice vinegar, okay? That really seasons the broccoli. It feels like it's seasoned through and through when you use this. And of course our usual olive oil. I like to use ground pepper. I'm going to use a little bit of sea salt, some lemon juice, okay? Now for those of you who feel like that for breakfast you've got to have bacon and eggs, you got to have ham, you got to have sausage, all that fattening stuff. This is a non-meat substitute that you can use for your meat if you like, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is get our pan nice and warm. And it is. Just need to put the olive oil in it. So I put some olive oil in there. And I'm going to go ahead and put my mushrooms in just a second. Now a lot of people don't wash off their mushrooms. I do. You don't have to do it just the way I do. I'm not a chef, remember. So I'm going to put these mushrooms in here. And they're still kind of wet. And then I'm going to cut this stem off. And I'm going to cut my broccoli lengthwise because that helps to crispen them. I'm going to cut the stalks off as much as I possibly can. And I don't want this to cook too fast. So if I see that it's I'm going to take it off for just a minute until I get my broccoli ready, because I want them to all cook about the same time. Now I like to cut my broccoli lengthwise like I'm doing here now. Okay? And I like to do that because they get crispier to me when I do it that way. And I like a good bit of broccoli. So you might not want this much broccoli. But I'm a broccoli girl. And you don't want to waste your florets anyway. You know, and even if you don't eat all of it, you can freeze it. Okay? So let's put this in here like this. I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to just use that. Plus my mushrooms. And you can break your mushrooms up if you like. Okay? Now, since I've got this broccoli, I'm going to go ahead and use all of this so I don't have to waste it. You know, you waste food, and it's really not smart. Okay? So we've pretty much used all the broccoli of that head, and I'm glad about that. Makes me feel like I'm doing right by nature, by the planet, not wasting, and by other people who really are hungry. Now, I'm also going to put some Can't Believe It's Not butter in here, because the butter just gives it a nice little flavor. Now, I have, in all honesty with you, I have at times used real butter, a little bit of real butter, because every here and there using some I don't think is a bad thing. I don't do it all the time. Now, I'm also going to season this. So I'm going to season this with my spice bouquet. And as you can see, we're almost out of it. But I'm going to use basically all that I have in here. You can put a little more in there when you get some more. But it's going to take about all of this to adequately season this. I can actually take this top off and go ahead and put the rest of that spice in there. Okay? And then I'm going to put a little garlic powder in there. And some ground pepper. I'm going to put a little sea salt. The top fell off of the sea salt. My grinder is, you don't get very much coming out of it, so don't worry, we're not putting much in there. Okay, and I'm gonna let that kind of cook some. I like for my mushrooms to brown. I like for them to brown. And I must tell you, this does better if you've got enough oil in it. Now I'm gonna turn the aisle up a little bit because it was on low. And I'm gonna let it really, now while that's trying to find its what I call its stride, we're gonna do what we love to do. You know what that is. You got your cans? All right, do this with me. 1, 2, 3, and 1. And 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to start to feel it in those arms. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 2, 3, 4. All right, let's march some now. Let's do about 15 at least. 1, 2, 3, and 1. And 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12, 13. Come on, smile. This is fun. 14. And 15, 2, 3, 4. Woo! I feel that. Now look at this. Can you see? Okay, let me move things out of the way so you can see. This is about ready to stir now because it's getting hot. I'm using a cast iron skillet, which I love using. I've got it on high basically. Okay. It's gonna start sizzling really good here in a minute. But I've stirred up those spices there, and I try to put the florets up against the pan so they can kind of get a little crispy. And I like for my mushrooms to be up against the pan so they can get nice and brown. I like for them to taste like they've been sauteed, okay? So let's let that do a little something, something there. Now after that has been doing its thing for a while, we're gonna add a little lemon juice. We're gonna add some of this rice vinegar, stir it and let it simmer some more, okay? Let's do a little bit more marching though while we're waiting. 1, 2, 3, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10, 11, and 12, 13, and 14, and 15, 2, 3, 4. All right, this is ready to stir some more now. Oh, look. Oh, that's starting to look really good there now. Let that brown up some more. I'm gonna put just a little bit more oil in there. You know, mushrooms soak it up somewhat. Put a little bit more oil in there. Okay, now let's do some lemon juice. Let's do some rice vinegar. Look at that. Now you can turn it down a little bit if you like. Or you can kind of flash saute it and then hurry and put it in the pan in your plate. That's really cooking up nicely. Now if you want, you can always taste a little one of your florets there. I'll let that sit there a minute. Just to kind of see if you've got the seasoning quite right. I'm gonna taste. That's good. Now, I can tell that my sea salt didn't put very much salt in it at all. So those of you who are hypertensive, this is not gonna taste salty to you at all. You can salt to taste, okay? So I'm gonna let you salt to taste. Oh, look at that. That is lovely, okay? Now, really, with a piece of toast, you could have that for breakfast. And maybe a boiled egg for some more protein. Onto that, you've got a breakfast right there. And it's amazing how much the mushrooms can substitute for your meat. And it's really delicious. I'm gonna taste one of the mushrooms. I know a lot of you say, I don't like mushrooms, but I think you'll like it this way. That is delicious. You've got to try this. It's really great. And like I said, salt and pepper to taste. But I think you're going to love that. I have hardly any salt in it because my grinder really didn't put out very much. So you can salt it to your taste. But that's the only little thing is we may have a difference of opinion in how much salt needs to go in there. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is delicious. And again, if you will go and get the Spice Kitchen, and I had the top, but I think I put it away. The Spice Bouquet. This is not it, but this is Spice Bouquet Italian seasoning, but that says salad seasoning. Spice Bouquet salad seasoning. And if you get that and use that with your vegetables, with the mushrooms and the broccoli, and then you can add salt and pepper to it. You're going to put some lemon juice with it. You're going to put some rice vinegar with it. Now, you don't have to put the garlic powder because actually there is probably some garlic seasoning in the salad seasoning. I just tend to like garlic, so I put that in, but you don't have to use this. And after you do this 2 or 3 times, you'll learn what makes it spice for you, what really makes it work for you. But this is a wonderful dish. It's got healthy food in it. You know, you're only using 2 things, broccoli and mushrooms, both of which are very healthy for you. We're not talking any cholesterol in here. There's no animal product in here at all, okay? And of course you can adjust the amount of oil that you use in there. You don't have to use as much as I did. And I think you'll love it, really. So I want you to try this dish. Now I did use, I can't believe it's not butter. And when you look at the contents, I don't really see any animal contents in here, but it does contain milk and soy. So that's the closest to animal product is the milk. And it contains some soy. But otherwise, and the soy, of course, is vegetable. So I think you'll like that dish. I had it for breakfast. I loved it, okay? That's one thing. I want you to make that dish, and I want you to let me know how yours turned out. And if you spiced it up with something else, like maybe you used some nuts in there with it, or, you know, some pine nuts, or you could have put some, you know, sprinkle some cranberry raisins, or craisins in there, as they call them, cranberry and raisins, or dried cranberries you might have put across there. That probably would spice it up very nicely as well. I think the taste of the dried cranberries would go nicely with the broccoli and the mushrooms. Okay, and again, that can make a very nice breakfast for you with a piece of toast and a cup of coffee. That's all you need for your breakfast. Now, let's talk a little bit about something that is really very common. Actually, I had a patient with this problem today. I went out this morning. I've already scoped somebody who came in with a bleed. This person had black stool and had been taking Plavix and aspirin. Okay, and that's nothing wrong because her physician put her on that. But I want to add something. Some of the patients, some of you were already taking Motrin, or another name for it is ibuprofen. Some of you were already taking Aleve, and you went on to take the Plavix and aspirin. Then you compounded your risk of bleeding because the Aleve or the Motrin can be irritating to the lining of the stomach. And then you're already thinning your blood, so you're at risk for bleeding. This lady had a bleed, didn't get a history that she had taken those other things, but I brought that up to let you know that when you're already on a blood thinner, then be very careful about what else you take, because some things don't go well with that. And so I want you to just be real aware that Motrin and ibuprofen are the same thing. Some people don't know that. Aleve is in the same class with Motrin. And a lot of you are hooked on BC and Goody powders. So I hope if you are on a blood thinner, you should not be taking BC or Goody powders. And many of you, most of you shouldn't be taking it anyway because you take a lot of it, take it on an empty stomach, that kind of thing. BC and Goody powder are practically addictive. And that's because they work so well. You get a headache, you take a BC, your headache's gone. Some people take it to help them sleep even. We've had some of the biggest bleeders come in who were taking BC and Goody powder. So I really want to put the word out there that you should be very careful if you're taking these things, and you shouldn't be taking them if you're already on a blood thinner, because that really increases your chances of bleeding, okay? So if you have a question, those of you out there who are on blood thinners, and there are a lot of different kinds of blood thinners now. At one time, we were only familiar with Coumadin or warfarin. That was a blood thinner, call it rat poison, you know. But that has been a very effective blood thinner for many years, and is still used. Those of you who are on Coumadin know that when you're taking Coumadin, you have to get your blood checked periodically to make sure it doesn't get too thin or too thick. But now they've come out with a number of new blood thinners, Brilinta, Xarelto, and a number of other thinners out there. And you don't have to come in and get your blood checked anymore. But you should still be vigilant. You should be looking at your stool. Okay, I've had patients tell me they just can't bear to look at their stool. They never look at it. Well, you should look at it. You should always look at your stool, because you want to know if it changes. Do you have black stool? A lot of times blood coming from the upper intestine is black by the time it gets out of your body. So that way you can tell the doctor when you started having black stool, because oftentimes that's blood. Not all the time. Some patients think it's black when it's really a dark green. You know, you ate some greens the night before, you took Pepto-Bismol. That'll make your stools turn dark and blackish appearing. You're on iron. Iron makes your stool black, okay? So these are all things I want you to be aware of, so when you are taking iron and your stools turn black, you know why, chances are why that's happening, okay? But sometimes when it's black, it's blood. And I can tell you that most of the time when it's black and it's blood, it smells really more awful than it normally would, okay? Never smells great, but it's particularly foul. And that's a real key finding in what we call melena. Melena is black blood stool. So, you know, just so you can be familiar with that. You know, you go to the doctor, you start using these terms, they think, you know a little something, and that's good. That's good. Tell them you heard it on Health Tips. All right, so if you're on a blood thinner, please be careful what else you take. Check with your doctor before you take other things, even over-the-counter things. There are some over-the-counter things that don't go well with your blood thinners, okay? All right, so I want you to be very aware of that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to just say a word about that's very common is H. pylori, and we've talked about that before. Those of you who have been found to have ulcers. If you have ulcers, there's a bacteria that causes about 80% of these ulcers, and it's called H. pylori. And some of you have been found to have it. Now, if you've been told that you have this bacteria, and there's no stigma to being told you have it. I mean, many people have it. At one time, we weren't even that excited about it, but it's been found to be a bacteria that in a very small number of people can actually cause stomach cancer. So if you're ever found to have H. pylori, not only should you be treated, but your doctor should recheck you after treatment to see if the bug has been eliminated. In other words, to see that we kill it. Because sometimes we have to treat you twice. The bug can be, and I use the word bug meaning the bacteria, can be hardy, okay? So if you have H. pylori, you need to get treated for it, and then you need to find out if that particular bacteria was eliminated. How would you find that out? You don't have to get scoped again, okay? You know, scoping to find that, or doing an upper endoscopy and taking biopsies, that's a good way, but it's not 100%, because the bacteria doesn't distribute itself evenly through the stomach lining. So if I take a biopsy over here and one over here, I might miss it, okay? So there's a stool test that we do often to detect the bacteria. The other thing is there's a blood test, but if you do the blood test, that might mislead you because you could have been treated and it's eradicated, but the blood test can remain positive for quite some time after the bug is gone. So that's not reliable if you've ever been treated for it, if you've ever had it and been treated. So I would recommend getting the stool test or the breath test if you're trying to determine if that bacteria has been successfully treated, okay? So I hope you remember that. We talked about ulcer disease and what commonly can cause it, in addition to certain meds that can do it. We also talked about blood thinners and what you should be aware of if you're on a blood thinner. If you have a question about what we've said tonight, drop us a line, and I might share that question with the audience because someone out there might have that same question, and we can answer that. I'd love to do that for you. And then lastly, but not least, we cooked. We did broccoli and mushrooms. We put a special seasoning on it, but you may just use salt and pepper. But we also used rice vinegar, and we also used lemon juice. So these are two very important ingredients. And of course, I use ground pepper, and you can use either sea salt or regular salt if you like. I like sea salt. Now the garlic powder is optional. You really don't have to use that, and that might make it a little too garlicky for you. So I hope you'll try this dish. I had it for breakfast this morning. I loved it. I hope you'll try it. Spice it up in your own way. Let me know what you did to it that made it taste so good, and we'll try it on the show if we like it. All right? And then of course we exercised. And that's something I want you to do when the show is not running. I want you to be in there exercising. And I want you to drink your water. And I want to hear from you. Okay? So, it's been a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm Dr. Alma Jenkins. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and I hope to see you next Saturday. Good night.